there was a moment, and I'm working my way back through as I remember what happened in the game, and I've got some notes here. The Riq Woolen meltdown, the taunting call. The thing I don't like about the NFL's taunting rules are they are not consistently applied. And I know that that has driven people at the league office crazy in recent years. Anytime there's a point of emphasis, that means, hey guys, you're not doing your job. We'd like you to do your job better. So we're making this a point of emphasis. See this rule right here? This rule taunting? You're not calling it. We're emphasizing it to you. Yeah, it'll come off as we're emphasizing it to all the teams, but we're emphasizing it because you're not doing your job. And like every 6 or 7 years, they will end up issuing a point of emphasis about taunting. It still doesn't get called like it should. And we know that because guys get fined every week. The league announces every Saturday the various fines for on-field misconduct, and taunting is always there. And most of the time, it hasn't been called. But in this case, now, Riq Woolen wasn't taunting any one person, but he was over at the sideline and he was jawing with them. And it was clear. Remember the Cassius Marsh play, Bears-Steelers on a Monday night, the first time that they made a huge point of emphasis about taunting, and they were calling it for everything, and he did like some kick and didn't even really do anything toward the Steelers sideline, and they threw a flag for taunting. I mean, that was over the top by way of excessive officiating. What we saw tonight, it was taunting, and he shouldn't have done it. And if you watch closely, as he was making his way down the sideline, you can see Matthew Stafford. And Matthew Stafford had something to say to him that may or may not have had an F word in it. And he didn't appreciate it. So it was perfect that on the next play, it's man-to-man coverage, Puka Nacua with Riq Woolen, and Matthew Stafford torched him for a touchdown. That was just beautiful. And then after that, they showed Riq Woolen and Nick Emenwari on the sideline exchanging words. And that was a point where it all could have fallen apart for the Seahawks. And they weathered the storm after that. I give them a lot of credit. Whatever they said, whatever they did, however they got past it, it was on the verge of crumbling. And Brady made the comment about, this is why we'll never be replaced by robots. I didn't know that was a threat. I know there's a lot of things we got to worry about, especially as it relates to AI. I didn't know that football players being replaced by robots was on the radar screen. But according to Tom Brady, that'll never happen because there's a human element to it. And that's what I love about football. Because no matter how complicated they try to make us think it is with the X's and the O's and the analytics and the terminology, it's still 11 on 11 guys who are putting on the line against each other their strength, their grit, their toughness, their speed, their agility, and everything. And it's an emotional sport. And we saw the emotions bubble over momentarily between Woolen and Emenwari, and the Seahawks in that moment needed to hold it together, and to their credit, they did. Now, I mentioned the muff punt. They already got one special teams coordinator fired for a punt return for a touchdown from Week 16. Chase Blackburn got run out the door 2 days later. I don't know that the guy that took over, because he was the assistant and he got bumped up, I don't think he's going to be around. I don't know how far I'm going out on a limb to say that. But I got a feeling there's going to be a new special teams coordinator in LA next year, because whatever that was, and it reminded me of the Hard Knocks season when the Jets were featured and Mike Tannenbaum, the former GM of the team, tried to field a punt. Kind of reminded me of that. And that was when a close back and forth game turned into 11 points, and it felt like the Rams were chasing that the rest of the way. You put yourself in a hole that is hard to dig out of, especially when you score, they answer, and then you're just kind of at loggerheads for the entire fourth quarter because nobody scored a point. So kudos to the Seahawks. I thought that the Rams would pull it off. I was wrong. I had a bad 2 weeks. Although the Broncos covered the spread. And one of the teams I picked last week to win lost but covered the spread. So I take a tiny sliver of solace in that. But the Seahawks did a lot of the things they had to do. They ran the ball a lot more than I thought they would. I got the numbers here. Kenneth Walker III, who was carrying the load due to the season-ending ACL tear suffered by Zach Charbonnet in the divisional round, he had 19 carries for 62 yards. Now, 3.3 average, not great. And they went an extended stretch where they bottled him up. He had like 35 yards rushing on the first 2 drives, and then 5 more after that until the third quarter. And then once it started to tighten up a little bit, that's when he started to find his groove again. But Walker has really come on. For a guy who has had a ton of potential, but there's been injury issues. I mean, hell, every Seahawks running back, it seems, since Marshawn Lynch has had injury issues. Walker's started every game this year. So that's a guy who's going to become a key player in Super Bowl 60, especially if, there's a chance to win at the... Is it too soon for Seahawks fans? I mean, do you not think that play, the Malcolm Butler interception, when they didn't run the ball to Marshawn Lynch, that's probably going to be discussed a lot over the next couple of weeks. By the way, Jerome Bettis is from Detroit. So 20 years after that, that's going to be talked about a lot. That was from 11 years ago. But Kenneth Walker III is in a position to get it done if the Seahawks are willing to continue to commit to the run. They did just enough today. I mentioned Smith and Jigba. He's unstoppable. He's incredible. He had that one-handed catch. I told my son, there was a time when only Chris Carter had the skills to make catches like that. And when they happened, they were, oh, crap moments. Now we see it, and we're like, wow, but yeah. And look, is it the gloves? I don't know. It still takes a hell of a lot of dexterity and focus and concentration. And it was just a thing of beauty. The one-handed catch at the sideline by Smith and Jigba was great to see. Sam Darnold's performance, I mean, if he had played like that last year, maybe the Vikings would have gone to the Super Bowl. I keep going back to week 18, sorry. But that's when the chariot first turned into a pumpkin for Darnold. But to his credit, this year, it has remained a chariot. And anytime it felt like it was going pumpkin, starting to get a shade of orange to it, that's when he'd find a way to turn it back around. He had 22 completions on 35 attempts for 374 yards, 3 touchdowns, a passer rating. And yes, if you watch the Football Night in America podcast, I strongly prefer passer rating to QBR. Passer rating of 127.6. Oh, no, wait, I'm looking at the wrong guy. I'm sorry, that's Matthew Stafford. He had a pretty good game. Here's Sam Darnold, which I think was close. He completed 25 of 36, 346 and 3, 127.8. Did they have the exact same? Darnold had 127.8 and Stafford had 127.6. I feel bad for Stafford. He was asked this week on the Let's Go podcast whether he thinks about the fact that this may be his last chance. And I think the Rams are here to stay as long as Stafford can keep playing. We spent weeks back in July and into August wondering whether or not he'd be ready to go week 1. He had that back injury. Something flared up between the offseason program and the start of training camp, and it was very touch and go. I remember working the phones when we were in Canton for the Hall of Fame game on NBC months ago, trying to figure out what was up with Stafford and where it stands and what they're going to do. And it really felt like they didn't know which way it was going to break for a while. It ended up breaking in the right direction for the Rams this year. And it's a shame. Look, that's what sucks about this. Good teams end up having to go home and they lose close games. And there's usually something they can blame themselves for. If I would have done this, if I would have done that, if I'd have made this decision, that throw, whatever. One little thing makes a difference. And we saw it in both games today. Even though the scores, many more points in the late game, still, seasons turn on those fleeting moments and decisions and things that are done like that. And there goes your whole season, everything you've worked for. And now you get a little bit of time to decompress. If you're a player, if you're a coach, scout, GM, whatever, it's right back at it. Senior Bowl this week. Got to go to Mobile, Alabama. Start looking over the next crop of incoming players. And then it's a scouting combine. And then it's free agency. And then you just keep going and it's off-season workouts. And they really only have like a month off between the middle of June and the middle of July to have a normal life. And then it's back into the grind. And when it ends, it's sudden. And it also hurts because it's not like the old days where teams stayed together year in and year out. Next year's Rams are going to be very different than this year's Rams. Next year's Broncos are going to be very different than this year's Broncos. There's always going to be changes. And that's what makes it hurt so much. I remember Steve Young saying years ago, every level that you climbed into the postseason, it hurts so much more to lose there because you're getting closer and closer to the prize and you get it ripped away from you right when you feel like destiny has brought you to a point where you're going to get it instead of the other team. So it was the Seahawks in the NFC Championship. They'll face the Patriots in Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara coming up in just 2 weeks. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.